welcome to Stacked in Japan. This week, we're going to cover a founder log story about staying productive with balanced portfolio of time investments and working remote from Okinawa and the current Japan tech industry. I'm pretty excited to talk about these. I think it really encompasses the current situation that I'm in. And yeah, there's like a lot of different aspects to it that I think we'll be able to cover. So let's jump in. All right. So staying productive with a balanced portfolio of time investments. I really think the way to balance your time and just be more efficient with planning is treating your time as an investment as much as possible. I don't think that means that you have to strictly schedule every minute of your day, but there'll be different categories of your time. You set yourself up for failure if you schedule every minute, honestly, unless you're that type of person. It's going to be more of these are the things I need to get done. And then you've got to give yourself a break to have more flexible time. Things come up all the time. It could be emergency, your commitments, or, if you're working in software, then maybe there's like an event or a customer problem. So your schedule is not always going to go to plan. In fact, I'd argue it's less likely to go to plan than you'd expect. Now, in terms of categories, there are, I would say, things that I call foundational or fundamental. So your family, your health, you probably consider hobbies because I think you do need to balance, things that you do. But the hobbies, depending how serious you take them, are they just to relax from its health break, or is it really to build a different skill? It'll obviously depend on the hobby, but I think with hobbies, like if you want to learn music or language learning, then sometimes you need some form of structured block time to just concentrate and do it. Other than that, a lot of the other commitments are going to be around projects, right? So are you investing in building a software product, or are you investing in running a cake shop or a bakery or something like that, right? You can also, you might be doing both and you have a different level of investment. Maybe you just want to do the bakery a few days a week, or you want to do software a few days a week. It's quite common. And then if you're still working a full-time job amongst this investment, then you have to be like, I can't move this block. It needs to be there. So, if it's typical 9 to 5, then you'll have your 8 hours within the day. I think the biggest way, because everyone has the same amount of time, where you do start to make progress, is if you can really scope down what you want to do in each session that you have on your calendar. That way you'll probably achieve something, and then it's, you feel good about it, and then it's a bit of it feeds back into itself. So it's easy to keep going and iterating. Also avoids burning out. The worst thing is if you schedule all these things in and you just can't achieve anything. Be realistic. You're not going to achieve that much in 15 minutes. And maybe you'll tire out if you do it every day. It's like typical, I think, for languages especially. So really start small and just let it compound over time. So if I'm talking about any blockers or lessons that I've learned so far with all this, I'll say it again because I just think it's so important. Don't overschedule. You'll just burn out and never be able to take things as they come. And then it'll shift your whole calendar, and it just doesn't work, right? And you get tired and guilty, and then you're like, I'm never going to achieve anything. But you might be making a lot of progress, right? I think it's a lot of a mental and mindset sort of thing. So what you need to do is really schedule the things that are important. We're going to move the needle, and how you want to move it, and you just schedule those things, and you leave the other things where you probably do it, but it doesn't have to happen at a particular time or block. So you can kind of fill in the gaps yourself as they come. Secondly, I would say make investments in a way that energizes yourself. For example, I love juggling multiple things because I enjoy learning new things. So the whole concept of all these projects I talk about, like AnyStack and my full-time job and family and everything, and just staying healthy, like hobbies, all that. If I'm able to do and make progress in all that, it feels like progress to me. And honestly, compounding that leverage can never be a negative. I know there are some people who almost brag about having tiny slices of time scheduled in their calendar to the point where you can't even see it unless you zoom in. That's fine if that really energizes you and and it works for you. I think these are things that you keep iterating over time. But generally me personally, I just don't think I've seen less scheduling to work better than the opposite, I would say. The other thing is really need to be clear on the goals and scope, as I mentioned before. But to do that, you really need planning. So it becomes key. So even if you set a session a week, or if you want to do it every day, like kind of a stand-up, you need that to just see how the things going, what you want to do, and then adjust as needed. The worst thing you can do is not plan, and then you enter the time that you schedule, and you're like, oh, what should I do? And then you spend like, the first 5-10 minutes at least figuring out what should be done. Then you don't really make any progress. That whole ramp up and context shift feeds back into the whole guilt and, making it more and more likely that you're going to stall or make little progress. To that point, which I think is going to be a repeated point, is avoid beating yourself down. Like, it's a guideline, and if you keep beating yourself over every miss, that's diminishing returns. You're going to just give up, or you're not going to keep going, which I think is really key. Everyone can get like really hyped and go, yeah, I'm going to do it. And go for it. And then they do it for maybe 5 minutes. Well, not 5 minutes. They do it for or maybe it depends on what it is, but they'll do it for a few weeks, and then they won't see immediate returns. Some things just take more time, like going to the gym or something like that. And they'll taper off, and then they'll fall back into old habits, or they'll just do less. A lot of the things that separate people who have maybe hit achievements or accomplished things is they've just managed to keep it consistent. And that's the biggest thing. It just really does compound over time. So, if you miss a session, or you took longer than expected, something came up, it's totally fine. Just do your best not to miss the next scheduled session. If it becomes regularly hard to maintain that schedule and you keep missing it, that's when during your planning or whatever your weekly check-in might be, you review your entire schedule again. And you ask yourself, do I still want to invest in this right now? Maybe I'm not as interested, or it's not really giving me much ROI right now, or it's just a bad time due to some other commitment. That's fine. I think your schedule is something that you need to keep iterating on, and I'd say every couple of months, even weeks, sometimes you'll have something that needs you to be like really focused on, other things where it's okay if it's passive or less invested in. So I would say that my feedback so far has been that small, regular investments can have huge returns over time. And I've noticed, and I think you'll notice as well, that people will start asking, where did you find the time to do that? Like, how do you have children and a family and a full-time job and all these other things, and yet you're still like, consistently putting out content, or you're consistently delivering new projects or learning something new, and you're learning a new language. Oh, wow, your Japanese got so good. You also do music, or you do all these other things. It's like, oh, wow. Like, are you still working? Like, where's the time? Where are you taking time from? It's just you using your time more efficiently, right? If you spend 15 minutes a day doing something like, I don't know, vocab for Japanese or something, then in a month, if you've done that almost every day, you'll probably have learned like a bunch of extra words, and then it compounds. Like, you go into another month, you do it for a few months. Next thing you know, you've increased your vocabulary by like couple of hundred words, right? And then it just looks like you invested so much time, but really, it just required some patience. You didn't have to go 200% on everything at once. Now, for me, I think this is something you can keep getting better at. It's a skill, and it's also just, it's a mindset, honestly. But you can't rely on mindset. I think it is more of the skill side. For me, I'm personally trying to see how far I can push things. How much can I really get done in the time that I have? I'm effectively using myself as the test bed for the AI operating system or OS that I'm building at AnyStack. So I've talked about the one-person unicorn as a North Star. If I seriously consider that, like, how would I do that as one person with one person time, right? And I'm sure the more I push it, the more I'll discover problems that I need to solve. So maybe, I talked about planning. Maybe the planning is really taking a lot of time, or I'm missing things while I do planning. How do I get more insights? How do I test how much return on investment I got from all the activities that I'm doing? Something that's almost like an assistant managing my time as well. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I really am pretty passionate about this stuff because I feel like it's fascinating to see. Well, everyone knows that everyone has the same amount of time, right? We all live the same timeline. It's just how do we use the time against the commitments we have to achieve what we want to achieve, right? That's basically it. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was remote work for Okinawa and then just the general Japan tech scene right now. And I'll start with the working remote from Okinawa. I get asked this all the time. I think it's been an amazing decision for me and my family. We're able to escape the concrete jungle, and it was mostly enabled by the pandemic. Remote was the thing. I was able to move before policies changed. And I had to take the chance, I think. Luckily for me, my previous employer, as I had guessed, eventually walked back remote work. However, my current employer has been consistent in maintaining that. So I know it's been good. I get to enjoy the Okinawa life with the family. And yeah, I honestly can't complain. I'm like trying to find things, but it's just been amazing. So if I'm talking about the work though, I would say it's been okay for me being managed remotely because of the company culture. I think it'd be way harder if the company wasn't really completely supportive, and then I would be remote, but maybe more of my team members or most of the group were going into the office, because you tend to miss a lot of context if you're not in there. But if most of the communication happens over Slack and remote type tooling, then it's not really a concern. I think one thing that I've done that has been good, and I think it's required, is I have made regular trips to Tokyo and other locations that have been as needed. And it does help to have some FaceTime before you go remote. And like, it's kind of like you need to refresh it over time. Like, I think there's a big thing. You go set the strategy on what we're doing, the plan, and then you can go back to working remote, especially once heads down. And you might, some people are kind of like, oh, well, is that enough? Like, shouldn't you really be in the office more? The funny thing is, at least the current employer, is that whenever I go to Tokyo or any of the locations, like I am in the office every day that I'm there. And then somehow I'm in the office more than those who actually live in the area. Like if we just take a tally of how many days I've been in the office, right, during a period. But if that's the case, I think it just proves that, maybe it's not too critical, at least for that employer, right? It's just, you need to maintain the relationships and make the most of a workshop or on-site or whatever you want to call it. I will say though, and I feel this more and more after COVID. I mean, I was always a supporter of remote work before COVID, even though it was pushed pretty heavily back against me at the time. I'm talking like before 2020, just that maybe for like 10 years. But the thing is, it's definitely not one size fits all. Like, remote work definitely does not work for everyone. I think there are definitely people, and even there's people now, like in my team, who do benefit from going to the office regularly. It's an easy forcing mechanism to make sure they don't get distracted, they can move forward, they can just do what they need to do, and then kind of leave it there and go home. But generally, I would say I've found that the self-motivated and disciplined people who would probably work well anywhere enjoy their own private spaces, and they're fine. There's no concerns for performance. They do what they need to do. They'll hit the goals. So you don't really need to push too much. Just make sure it's clear what we need to do. I actually consider myself one of those people. Quite autonomous. We'll always like reach out if needed, keep people in the loop as things progress. It's like low touch. But you got to keep in mind, that's not everyone. And there are a lot of companies, which I guess rightfully so, are looking at the lowest common denominator. So if they say, oh, we need to manage a bunch of people who are not, including people who are not doing their jobs, then it's just easier to get everyone to come to the office. Now you're sacrificing everyone's convenience for the few, but it's a blanket solution that some just find easier. There's studies like I don't want to go too deep into that, but there are studies either way, right? Depending on the company, which is better or worse. And I feel like it conflicts like every month there's a new study. So as usual, it depends. It depends on your company, your leadership, the team, what you're working on. It really is more about making sure you just execute on the right things. That's more key, really. Like this, if the strategy is very clear and then the team can execute in the path of that strategy and what needs to be done, no one's going to question how they did it. They don't care if they did it on the sofa or on their bed or if they, did it at home or were in the office like all the time. No one really asks that question. They only care when things start going bad. And as if you noticed, the industry shifted with AI a lot, and there have been multiple layoffs, and everyone's not sure like how the market will shape up in the next few years. So that means there is a lot more panic and scrutiny of everything, right? When it was the good times, when I felt like tech had basically unlimited money and we're just printing more and more money, no one really questioned much, right? Yeah, like, metrics are going fine. It's all good. No worries. Now metrics are not going good. We're not getting, the 5 times, 10 times growth that we've been having for the past 10 years. So suddenly it's like, oh, well, if we can't increase revenue, we need to start decreasing costs, right? To increase our margins. And then, yeah, that just becomes a whole spiral, which then, destroys the culture, the product. And it very rarely, I would say, lead into a better end result. It just feels like a decline of a company most of the time. That said, we'll see. I think a lot of companies these days, they're kind of unprecedented, right? They're kind of bigger than ever, and they can kind of afford to fail a bit or take a step back, and maybe they'll still shoot up again in the future. That said, talking about all this, I just feel like this makes the one person, or let's say even few person unicorn, sound even more appealing. Because while I do it fine, managing people sometimes just gets difficult, right? And you might be surprised to hear that, but eventually I'd prefer to do less of it in the future. I mean, sure, I don't want to just manage AI personas or something, but I feel like a smaller, nimbler team these days can probably get way more done than they could in the past. So that's why you're starting to see sub 100 people companies reach ridiculous amounts of revenue and viability as a company. Now, besides the fact that I'm in Okinawa, I guess there's a lot of questions. I guess what if your plans don't work out, or what if you let go somehow? It's harder in Japan, but it's still possible if something really bad happens. And that's one of the downsides, and it's kind of reflective of the industry right now in Japan. Tech salaries are not as high as they used to be. Kind of similar to the US, I guess. You have the outliers, obviously, but the bigger, well-known companies, they're hiring way less. Some of them have stopped hiring, right? They don't need to make big competitive offers with each other because everyone's sort of looking for a job. I would say, though, that the floor maybe has increased in Japan. So back in the day, it was very uncommon to see a job that was over 10 million yen. That was already considered very high. But now it's quite, I've noticed it's even at, non-conglomerate, multinational companies, I think it is coming up. I've seen quite a lot of 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, even in some places, depending on level. But back then, even a couple of years back, I felt it was only possible at the real big guys like Amazon, Indeed, Google, the really well-known big hiring companies in the area, which kind of feeds into my next point is the fact that now a lot of them don't even support remote means that I've sort of boxed myself in a little bit. So unfortunately, moving to Okinawa was good, but I'm at the trade-off with that I have less options significantly. So even if I want to change jobs, then it becomes harder, or I just have to take a pay cut, right? There's only very few companies that would hire really a senior person who's remote and not in Tokyo, for example. For me, it's a forcing function, but I have to control my own destiny with my own ventures, but also regardless of the success of those ventures, right? I also need to make myself unique enough that a company would be willing to accommodate the fact that I am not in a main hub, right? Which it kind of excites and it more excites me actually. I think it's something I wanted to do anyway. But if you're looking at a risk factor, maybe from my wife's perspective, it's a little bit more oh my God, what are we going to do? So that's kind of what I'm trying to work through. And that's kind of the story you'll hear as I talk more and more on these podcasts. Yeah, but maybe going back to the timing that I changed companies, it was in 2022 though. So it was right before the good times started ending with hiring freezes and major layoffs. And then that was around the same time as well where the big introduction of ChatGPT and LLMs and everything became the big AI thing that we're looking at today. The industry, as I mentioned, I think it's changing in some ways for the better, but it's still kind of stagnated, which I think it actually becomes a new opportunity for new players. So it could be any stack like my company, or it could be others, where Japan is a traditionally quite fragmented market where you have heaps of players in the same space, each with a slice of the pie. I expect that to happen more and more in Japan. So, even more outside Japan market as well. But the fact that we're at a turning point where it will happen more easily and readily in Japan is a pretty exciting thing, in my opinion. That said, with all this, I think I'm confident enough that I won't be in a situation where I can't find work at all. I just have to be realistic that the compensation levels that you typically see in a really large tech company might just not be as realistic in the future, right? But that said, I feel like there is opportunity here. I keep saying opportunity, but I really do feel like this is the time where so many new entrants can really break into the market, which is why I really want to invest more and more in a diverse set of projects, any stack, but others as well. Because at the same time with all this happening, Japan is also seeing really high levels of tourism. With a weaker yen, that means buying power is quite high from people coming overseas. So if it's a USD or even, for myself, I think Australians with AUD are also coming at record levels as well. And it also brings more interest into Japan. So people will start looking, I really like Japan. I like going there. Maybe I can try living there, look for a job, see if you can make the move happen. Right now, it's actually way harder because there's less of a well-paying job that supports that move. So it's less visa support, but then also less competitive salaries that would bring people into Japan. I mean, there are some companies that still do it, but they're playing right on that that gray area where people are going to make the trade-off it's Japan, but I'm going to get a lower salary. But if I stay where I am, my salary is way higher, but I don't get to Japan. So what do I do? And then realistically, a lot of people are just going to be okay, I guess I'll just be a tourist in Japan. I'll go now and then, but I won't actually try and live there. Which I think is still, it's a good experience to at least try for a bit, but it's sort of a friction point to get external talent, I guess, into Japan at the same levels as before. I'm just going to continue to be laser focused on the one person unicorn dream and just keep building in that direction, because I think that's going to prepare myself and hopefully future clients and customers to brave that storm and come out the other side. Thank you for tuning in this week. I hope I was able to drop some insights. If you have some questions, want to know more, feel free to leave a comment. Otherwise, follow Stacked in Japan, and I'll see you next week.